Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Unsung Heroes, episode number 6 of the 2026 AMA Pro Motocross Championship, and also episode number 23 of the year in total. I am Trey Stire, your host. Thank you so much for listening once again. The Crestview Construction Southwick National was a really wild day. A lot of crazy crashes, a lot of fluctuation in the finishing order. Best wishes to all of those who went down and ended up on the injury list. But there were plenty of privateers scoring points, new faces coming from overseas. You had rookies making their debut. You even had, of course, the natural at Southwick, your local racers who always step up to the plate and have that home field advantage in the Southwick sand. They were scoring points as well, and we'll recap every single privateer and non-factory rider who scored this weekend. Thank you so much for listening. Of course, if you listen to this audio edition, you can find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeart Radio, YouTube. You're listening to it, so you know where to find it. But tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers about this show. Be sure to keep spreading the word. And of course, you can find the written version of this series on treystire.wordpress.com. Without further ado, let's get into the top racers from the Southwick National in the privateer and non-factory ranks. We are kicking things off on the Unsung Heroes of Southwick with one of the local riders. Of course, Southwick, a home field advantage of sorts for Northeast natives. He is from the state of Massachusetts. He walked away with a point on Saturday afternoon. 21st in the first moto, 22nd in the second moto. First points in AMA motocross since 2022. Please welcome the number 560, Kyle Murdoch, to the Unsung Heroes. What's up, man? Congrats on the point, and I'm sure that had to feel good to be mixing it up among the 250 class elites.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, first off, thanks for having me on, man. Really appreciate it. But yeah, great day for me. I'm super stoked on the point. That was kind of a low key goal of mine this year was to kind of get back up into that mix and get myself a point. So yeah, no, I was stoked to be able to do that in the first moto, and then to go out in moto two and still be right around the same area and get 22nd. I can be happy with that. So yeah, no, great day.
Of course, the 250 class B group got to hit the track first. You get to cruise on that nice soft sand before it gets chewed up, before it gets really bumpy out there. Take me through your day at Southwick. Of course, you mentioned being very happy with your performances. You were right there in that range, both motos, just outside the points, fighting with a lot of guys. And of course, the 250 class has been very stacked all year long. Plenty of talent, whether they're factory guys, privateers, satellite guys, it doesn't matter. There's so much talent in that 250 class. But talk about your day. Talk about how nice and fresh the track was at the beginning of the morning compared to what you rode on at the end of the day and how your motos progressed.
Yeah, to start the day, obviously, yeah, having B group, it's kind of a blessing for us. But yeah, the track was really good. Obviously, super smooth. The berms were perfect. So those first 2 to 3 laps when we get to go are really really important. So I was able to get myself a good lap early, and that stuck. And I qualified 19th, which was really really good. I was stoked to be in the top 20. So that gave me a solid gate pick for Moto 1. So going into Moto 1, definitely wanted to just get a decent start and be up in the mix and just have a good moto. And that's exactly what happened. I was able to dodge a little bit of carnage through the first lap and get myself up into the teens, and found myself battling with some really good dudes. And I was just stoked because I was holding a good pace and keeping up. And yeah, so I rode most of Moto great. And I did have a little tip over, which was like really, really quick, and ended up getting up and getting back by a couple dudes who got by me. Finished off 21st, which was great, like I said. And then Moto 2, same thing, just trying to get a good start and just hold my own because I know 2 30-minute motos is tough, so got off to another decent start, and yeah, just rode a nice race and felt strong through the whole thing. And once again, found myself battling with some really good dudes, and yeah, just stoked on my performance. I've been working hard this year and putting in the time on and off the bike. So to have it all kind of come to fruition, it was a good feeling.
Of course, I mentioned the home field advantage. So many Northeast guys, whether it's been top level champions or elite level guys like Doug Henry, like John Dowd have excelled over the years. Of course, other local guys, Robbie Marshall was always one to excel at Southwick, Chris Canning. You're scoring points at Southwick. For those who don't ride that track and just watch the races, from your opinion and your point of view, what makes Southwick such a home field advantage for you guys who grow up in the Northeast?
Yeah, definitely. Everyone talks about Southwick being a very sandy track, and it definitely is. But you hear nowadays how it has a hard base, and I think for us, just kind of being able to ride that track a few times throughout the year with our local racing schedule and even with their practice schedule, just being able to do that and know the track and know that it is a little hard in some spots and there is some weird things that may happen or may pop up, like that gives us a real big advantage, I think. So just to know those few things and just overall to know the track and just to feel at home and have all your home fans there cheering you on, like it just makes you feel a little bit more calm rather than going somewhere else. So definitely helps us out.
Two 30-minute motos, obviously very tough, but that wasn't where you stopped. You decided to make the drive up north of the border to Canada, make the appearance once again in the Triple Crown Series. Riverglade MX is a solid performance for you there as well. Talk about making that journey, because I know some people every year, a lot of people, especially around the Redbud Gopher Dunes doubleheader, try to attempt that. They'll race Redbud Saturday, then head north on Sunday. Some people do the Southwick Riverglade double as well. Take me through your part going back up into Canada as well, because you've been putting together some great results north of the border. You got a top 5 in the second moto last weekend at Gopher Dunes. So talk about your trip north of the border. I'm sure it was a pretty long drive from Southwick into Canada, but racing 230s on Saturday and then 230s on Sunday, you had to be wore out yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. Coming into the weekend, we knew it was going to be a pretty tall task, but we had kind of been prepping for it all year once we saw the schedules line up. So I was pretty eager to get both done just because, Southwick being the home race, I don't want to miss out on that. And then I'm kind of chasing the points the best I can up in Canada as well. So I didn't want to miss that either. So yeah, as soon as Southwick was done, me, my dad, and I had my uncle even step up and help us out, but we all loaded up the van and it was about a 10-hour drive through the night to Riverglade. We got there about 3 in the morning. Yeah, I woke up and was pretty tired. I actually was just tired. I didn't feel too beat surprisingly from Southwick. So that was kind of good. But yeah, to go out there and race Riverglade being completely different conditions than Southwick too, waking up and it was muddy when deep ruts just like Unadilla would almost be. So the adjustment was a little tough, but I had a great day up there as well. I qualified 10th in the morning, which I was happy with, like I said, with the track. And then yeah, to go 8-7 on a very rutted track that we don't really get to ride a lot of ruts back in the Northeast. So to do well like that in top 10, even after Southwick, I was pretty stoked on my whole weekend. So I'm gonna take it as a win for sure.
You've been spending a lot of time up in Canada the last couple years. For those who might not follow the Triple Crown Series, you're currently national number 29. Even though you're competing aboard your own effort, you're putting in solid results, top 5 level, top 10 level. What led you to racing in the Canadian Nationals full time? And for those who might not watch every weekend or might just keep up with the sport a little bit, take them through your experience so far in Canada, what it's like racing up there on Sundays, and how that's helped you become a better racer.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple years back, we were kind of just we've always heard about Canada, and the people in the New England area have kind of always been ones to venture up that way because it's pretty close for us. All the rounds are pretty much within 10 hours, at least all the East Coast rounds that they do. So driving distance wise and just being easier than some of the AMA rounds for us. We've a little bit leaned towards that. But no, Canada's been amazing. I've really learned to like it up there. All the tracks have been super amazing. All the people have been amazing. The fans, even just other general managers or team managers or just people who work up there are super nice to us and welcoming to us when we go up there. So just the whole vibe of going up and racing, I've learned to like a lot. So that's kind of what we've geared up for the past 2 years or so, and tried to just get as many points as I can at each round and get the lowest number I can for the next year and just have as much fun as I can as well. And it seemed to all been working that way. So I really like it up there.
Number 29 is a pretty good place to start, and of course, as I mentioned, you had a top 5 in the moto last week at Go for Dunes, so that was a nice chunk of points. Speaking of your bike and your program, obviously privateers sometimes they'll go with a full-on stock setup, sometimes they'll have some mods, get some things dialed in, whether it's suspension, whether it's engine. For your KX250F, what are you working with? Is it a fully stock machine, or do you have a little bit of help on there, a little bit of extra parts to get you up front?
For the most part, we're running a pretty stock rig over here. We have a few small things helping us, just some fuel and mapping and an air box and whatnot, but no motor work, just to keep things simple and to keep things trustworthy. Honestly, like I'm racing my bike and I can put plenty of hours on it each weekend, and I'm not stressing that the motor is going to let go or anything like that. So yeah, we run a pretty bare stock program, but honestly, it seems to be working out for us. The bikes have been very great and reliable. I'm getting helped out by a local dealership down here by the name of Central Mass Power Sports. They've stepped up huge for me for the past 2 years, helping me out with the bikes, parts, and anything else that I need. And then factory connection suspension has played a huge role with keeping me super comfortable. And yeah, things have just been really great.
Of course, the Canadian Series still has a couple rounds left in the year. Looking at the points right now, of course, there are several guys up toward the top who are factory guys or amateur stars. Ryder Malinowski, of course, an American, leading the points. But you missed the first couple rounds of action. You're still 13th in points, so pretty solid in there. 3 rounds to go. Of course, I know you're looking forward to having fun. You're looking forward to maybe lowering your national number a little bit. But in terms of position goals, what are you looking for to finish out the season up north?
We're looking to get into that top three, no doubt. I mean that second moto at Gopher, that P4 was really really good, and just in general, my lap times and just how I've been riding, I know I can run up towards the front. So kind of just need to put a few things together and get some starts rolling, and I think I can shoot for a nice top three finish for sure.
Talk about your program as well, because you are obviously a pro motocross specialist. You're going out there hitting these outdoor tracks during the summer, but a lot of guys who are doing this only during the summer have jobs or working throughout the week. Talk about your program and how you're balancing work life with also keeping your fitness in tip-top shape, keeping your bikes up, all of that. Talk about that balance, how you put things together both at work and, of course, when you're on the bike.
Yeah, I mean, being a privateer, that's the kind of the name of the game, and finding the balance between work life and riding life and things like that. But no, we're blessed up here in New England to have a really solid local racing scene still. So for the most part, in the spring, from when stuff thaws out up here after winter to just up until nationals, we have local racing every weekend that I can keep myself very sharp and keep the intensity levels up. And then along with that, just keeping up on the workout program and keeping myself in check and holding yourself accountable. And but at the same time, not overdoing it, because I do work during the week. I'm doing construction, so there's hot days and there's long days where maybe you don't get to train, but at the same time you got to rest. So you kind of just got to learn and figure out that nice balance to life. But it seems to be working out for me this year well, and I seem to have things on a good path. So I'm happy with that. And yeah, for the bikes part too, my dad's huge with everything. He's a great mechanic, so he keeps things in check for me and makes sure things are top notch. And he really really steps up huge. So I can't thank him enough.
It seems like once we go north a little bit, the playing field evens up a bit. Of course, you have these factory guys, these young, talented racers on satellite teams, and you were beating some of them this weekend. I know obviously you've scored points at Southwick in the past. You've had some really great runs at the track, but have there ever been times where you're battling some of these racers on the track and you're kind of like, wait a second, I watch this guy every single weekend and I'm battling him? Has there ever been a pinch me moment when you're racing up there at Southwick and battling in and around the points?
Definitely. I think this year was kind of that moment for sure. Like I said, both motos I was in battles just for about the whole 30 minutes, and each dude who went by me was on a factory bike, and I'm just like, holy crap, like I'm really in the mix right now. And kind of was just trying to, like, tell myself to keep focused and keep pushing, because you're doing great. You're right here with them. So yeah, this year kind of was a little bit of a starstruck moment and cool moment, just because I was doing the deal. So yeah, stuff like that's awesome. And even just like sight lap things at Southwick, just getting to roll around and hear everybody cheering for you and hear the fans going crazy at your home race. That's really something to kind of take in. So I try and remember that stuff the best I can.
Now moving into the future, of course, 2026 starting to draw to a close in terms of the pro racing. Hard to believe, but looking toward the future, how long do you expect to keep racing in Canada, racing here in the US? Are you still going to be a Southwick only guy for the next few years? Will we see you at more of these East Coast Nationals, maybe like a Unadilla? What do you think is in store for you in these next couple years?
Definitely going to keep at it. For now, I definitely want to keep the Canadian deal and going up there. I really like to do those, and maybe even try and get out to the two West rounds that they start with some year. That would be really cool to do, just to do the whole series and say I've done the series. And definitely would like to get to some more East Coast AMA rounds too. It's been a few years since I've done any of those, like a High Point or a Unadilla. So definitely not fully off the list yet, but nothing really set in stone yet. But just probably the same plan as this year for next year.
This has been Kyle Murdoch on the Unsung Heroes, taking us through his weekend at Southwick and north of the border in Riverglade as he continues to put great results in the Canadian Motocross Series on the board. Before we conclude, Kyle, feel free to give a shout out to those who are helping you get to the track each and every weekend, whether it's here in America or up north of the border in Canada. Give some thank yous and some shout outs. And also, feel free to plug your social medias where the folks who listen can follow along with you to see your journey throughout the year.
Definitely. I just want to give a thank you first off to my mom and my dad for being the most supportive they can be for me, along with everyone else, my friends, my family, all those people too. They go out of their way to be supportive, and it means a lot. And all my sponsors: Central Mass Power Sports, Factory Connection, Troy Lee Designs, Onium, HGS Exhaust, Hinson, Acherbys, Aggressive Graphics, everybody else who helps me in any way. It's really appreciated. You guys step up huge and can really make things happen for a privateer. So thank you. And yeah, you guys can follow me on my Instagram. It's Murdoch.560, and I'll be posting as much as I can on there, and can follow along my racing. And thank you for having me on.
Of course, man, thank you once again for your insight. Kyle Murdoch, look out for him through the rest of the Triple Crown motocross season. You can watch those Canadian races on Ride.tv. 3 rounds remaining in the Canadian series, so still a lot of racing left to go. He's number 29 in that series. Kyle, thanks for the time. Best of luck in the rest of your season in Canada.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you once again to Kyle Murdoch for the time. Great having insight from a racer who not only competed Saturday here in America, but also competed Sunday up in Canada. Of course, as I mentioned, 3 rounds left in the Triple Crown Series. Canadian motocross roaring to life. He's sitting 13th in points right now, knocking on the door of the top 10. And of course, as he mentioned, he wasn't at those first couple West Coast rounds. Sandali, DeChambeau, and Walton, the final 3 rounds of the season coming up in Canada. Thanks once again to Kyle, and go follow him as he mentioned, Murdoch.560 on Instagram. And now we'll get into the 250 class. We kicked things off with the 250 class, and as I mentioned, there were plenty of international racers who made the trip from overseas, including one of the fastest rising stars in pro motocross right now, Francisco Garcia from Spain. He came over along with his Venom Bud Racing Kawasaki team. And of course, if you followed the sport for a long time, you know that Bud Racing has been performing at a very high level for the last 3 decades or so. They've spent some time over here in America, but of course, they're a French based team. They compete right now in the EMX 250 Championship as well as the World Supercross Championship. Of course, that season getting ready to start in August, but both of their EMX 250 riders, who coincidentally are 1-2 in points, made the trip over. Garcia, who just signed a contract with Kawasaki's factory organization, so he will be moving up to the MX2 class, the MXGP version of the 250 division next season to partner alongside Mathis Villan, and he's well on his way to a championship in that EMX 250 class. He won 13 out of the first 16 motos of the season, which is an insane stat. 104 points. He is clear of the rest of the competition. Absolutely dominant in the EMX 250 division. Garcia, he was repping number 290 this weekend aboard his Kawasaki. He fit right in with the big dogs, qualified top 15, and put himself inside the top 10 to start the motos. Finished there as well. 9-8 moto scores. He had some battles with the likes of Cole Davies, with the likes of Levi Kitchen, and it was better than his first professional race this year, which happened at the MXGP of France a little bit earlier on at La Capelle Marival. He was 10th place overall there, 8th place overall at Southwick, and I think Garcia has what it takes to be one of the next stars of the sport, especially in the MX2 division next year. Of course, there are probably going to be a lot of changes. We think the Coonans are coming over here to the United States full time. Some of that old guard, Geiser, Hurlings, Fevra, they've got less runway in front of them than behind them. Their time is starting to run out. So we're going to see these guys start to rise up in the next few years and hopefully carry the flag. But it's not just Jorge Prado. It's not just Guillaume Ferez. It's not just Ruben Fernandez carrying the flag for Spain. Francisco Garcia might be the next guy to do so. Just behind him in the overall scores, once again, another top 10 for Carson Mumford on the AEO Power Sports KTM. Starting to sound like a broken record, but Mumphy has been the best privateer consistently all summer long in the 250 class. 10-11 were his moto finishes on Saturday, a ninth place overall run. He's beating factory racers every single weekend, and he missed the great outdoors the last 2 summers. I know I've mentioned that a couple times, but that makes his runs even more impressive. When you're out of action for 2 summers in a row, you can lose some time, lose ground on other guys who might have made gains. And of course, this is Mumford's first year with the AEO team as well. Brand new organization for him. He'd never rode a steel frame bike before 2026. So it's been a big learning curve for Carson, but he's clearly figured things out. That team is performing possibly the best they ever have. Derek Kelly, Josh Faree's got him solid results, but Carson Mumford is getting them top 10s on a weekly basis. The number 71 keeps climbing the playoff seeding as well. A bit further back in the pack, Parker Ross on the Toyota Redlands Bar X Yamaha. He was the top Bar X guy for the first time this season, and it was a more consistent, better weekend from Parker. He's slowly starting to find that form. 17-17, not crazy. They're not going to jump off the page in terms of moto finishes, but it's progress. 10 points on the board, and he's starting to find his rhythm after a rough start. Speaking of rookies, though, we've had a guy like Parker Ross, a sophomore who put together a great rookie season, now a true rookie, making his pro debut at Southwick. Jessen Turner, who of course is in the SMX Next ranks, usually he will be competing for that coveted Open Pro Sport title at Loretta Lynn's later this month, but he made his professional debut at Southwick running number 507. Of course, he's a part of that Club MX Yamaha team, has a couple podiums in SMX Next, and made his debut. Max Volan still out with a wrist injury, so it was Turner and Hunter Yoder representing for Club MX. It was a rough start to the day, but he turned things around later in the afternoon. He spent Moto 2 inside the top 15 pretty much all race long, got as high as 12th. He lost the spot late to Michael Mosman, but a 13th in your second ever professional moto, that's pretty solid for Jessen, especially with the level of talent in the 250 class. 13th, second career moto, a big building block, and a lot of these guys that he's racing at Loretta's have also ran a moto or two throughout the summer. Carson Wood, Landon Gibson was in the field on Saturday, Luke Fouser. Some of these guys are getting their feet wet with a professional experience. Vincent Way, Cade Johnson, a couple more names in there. Ryder Malinowski, his usual teammate, competing north of the border and leading the points in the Canadian Motocross Series. So there are plenty of racers with talent getting some reps in the pro classes before shifting that focus to Loretta's. Congrats to Jessen on his solid debut in the 250 class, and hopefully we'll see him back on a pro gate sometime soon. Speaking of 13th place finishes, though, Gavin Towers' best career moto finish to begin the day, a 13th place for the number 73. Of course, he didn't race Southwick last year. He was injured, but it was a great effort, fantastic performance, and things were looking even better at the start of Moto 2. He came around the first corner, was in 7th very briefly, but unfortunately, he was clipped by another rider. He said he got run over a couple times, which was really unfortunate, and he was starting to get closer to the points later in the moto, but went down hard again. Ended the race in 30th. But either way, a lot of positives to take away from Southwick for the sophomore. Career best moto finish, really solid performance, and I think we'll be seeing him closer to the top 15 throughout the rest of the summer. The other member of the Venom Bud Racing Kawasaki team was there inside the top 20 overall. Jake Cannon, the Aussie. Of course, some will know him as Charlie's little brother. He's been competing all over the world. He's been racing the EMX 250 series this year. He'll be in World Supercross starting next month. He was in the Australian Supercross series last fall. So Cannon getting plenty of valuable racing experience, not only in different disciplines, but also around the world. 18th overall for Cannon. This was his second start, if you remember, a couple years ago. He raced the Redbud Combine when Moto 2 was rained out. They let a couple of them race in the pro ranks if they wanted to. Cannon did so when he was still a part of the Quadlock Honda team, and he scored some points. So in his second pro national, things were a bit better. Qualified inside the top three, of course, B group getting that fresh soil, that fresh sand early in the morning. They get to rip and set some great times. Cannon ended up just behind Sasha Coonan and Cole Davies in the qualifying results. But Moto 1, he was in and around the top 15, went down pretty hard. Unfortunately, he had to retire from the race, but he came back with a vengeance later in the day. He started around the top 10 once again, went down hard, but he got back up and he started clawing his way through the pack, including passing his potential future brother in law, Lux Turner. And that was shown on the TV broadcast as well, but 14th in the final moto for Jake Cannon. He was wearing number 303 this weekend. It'll be unlikely to see him back in pro motocross this summer, but great to see him over here in America. Of course, his sister back in Australia, the Australian Motocross Championship entering its final stretch. Their women's series had round two this weekend. Lachlan Turner got the win ahead of Cannon and McCutcheon. But of course, I've mentioned the EMX Championship. There's still a few rounds to go there. Cannon is second to his teammate, Francisco Garcia. He's 17 points clear of Nikolai Skovberg in P3. So he's got a little bit of a buffer there, but 4 rounds to go for that EMX 250 series if you want to follow along on social media and mxgp.tv. Lommel in Belgium, Uddevalla, Sweden, Arnhem, Netherlands, and Afyon, Turkey are the 4 rounds left in that championship. Of course, MXGP back this weekend in the United Kingdom at Fox Hills for the first time in a long time. Back to our regularly scheduled programming. Avery Long, points in both motos. That was huge for him. Of course, he's been struggling with some illnesses this year, not quite at 100%. He went 18-18 on Saturday. Points in both motos is a big sign of progress, and of course, that meant both members of the AO Power Sports KTM roster were inside the top 20, which is a nice step for them. MX6 Racing, Kawasaki, of course, with one rider, Marshall Welton. We spoke with Marshall on last week's edition of the show, and unfortunately, qualifying bit him. He mentioned that that's one thing he wanted to improve. Southwick qualifying is paramount. He did not make the cut for the top 36, and worse, he got a bad start in the consolation race, and he failed to make the transfer positions. Unfortunate for Marshall, but he was able to line up in Moto 2 at the end of the day as an alternate with a couple riders out from injury. He made things count, man. He charged up through the pack, blitzed his way to a 15th place finish, tying his best moto result of the year. He also had a 15th to end the day at Hangtown, but that was a positive In an otherwise rough weekend, Welton solid at these next couple rounds coming up. He had a really good run a couple years ago at Washougal, so look out for him there. But of course, Spring Creek this weekend. Club MX Yamaha, I mentioned him a little bit earlier. Hunter Yoder, he scored his career best moto finish as well. There was a few guys who recorded career bests. Hunter Yoder was P15 to begin the day. He's happy with his progress. He's getting stronger, but unfortunately, some sort of issue took him out of things in Moto 2, but he'll be back with a vengeance this week in Spring Creek. 1818 was Avery Long. He used consistency to his advantage when some of the others were fluctuating, having a good moto and then having a DNF or something along those lines. Just behind him in each moto, not quite in the overall standings, somehow 3 spots back despite going 1919. Russell Bacheri, of course, he's from Duxbury, Massachusetts. He's a local guy. He scored his first ever professional points at the venue during the 2024 season in just, I believe, his second or third pro national. And he went and put together his best pro national so far this weekend, 1919. Of course, he has support from the legendary, beloved privateer organization 3D Racing, but he's competing this summer under the awning of the McGinley Clinic Privateer Support Program, and he put the PSP crew back into the points for the first time since the opener at Fox Raceway when Brock Bennett scored 3 points. Speaking of good runs, Hayes Edwards, he's a sophomore this summer, turned pro last year at Thunder Valley. He's aboard an EBR Performance Family Power Sports Yamaha, doing things more on his own for outdoors. Of course, it was a full team effort during Supercross. He's still on an EBR bike, but just doing things, going to the races on his own. He scored points for the second time in his career. His first was at Budds Creek last summer. He scored the final point of the 250 season a year ago. And then it was a 30th at the beginning of the day. Not great result, not something to completely write home about, but he was also one of those guys who inherited a spot on the gate with some withdrawals. Joe Shimoda, of course, pulled out of action. Hayes originally was fifth in the LCQ, but he got bumped into the show. 30th to start the day, but man, he charged through the pack in Moto 2. He left it all on the table. 36th position is where he crossed the finish line to take the green flag, but he got 20th at the checkered flag. Plus 16 during the moto is a great jump. First 2 points of 2026, and what a determined, what a focused ride from Hayes Edwards. Number 146. Keep an eye out for him if you like guys who charge through the pack and guys who are starting their pro career still, of course. Like I mentioned, he's only been pro for a little over a year, so still building that notebook, still getting those notes on the page. Lux Turner was behind him, another down weekend. It's been a tale of 2 summers for Lux Turner. He's had some really good rounds, of course, the career best at Fox Raceway, really solid at High Point, but otherwise there's been a lot of bad luck involved. He had a Moto 1 DNF and was running in the top 15 during Moto 2, but something happened late. Lux ended up dropping down in the order. He still claimed the point in 21st, but it wasn't quite what we expect out of the number 43. And of course, the last point in the 250 class, we heard from him a bit earlier in the show. Kyle Murdoch, number 560 on the Kawasaki, going 21-22. A solid afternoon for the Massachusetts native, competing among some of the top factory riders and top privateer riders in the sport. Great ride from him and a top 10 performance on Sunday as well at Riverglade for the Triple Crown Series in Canada. Be sure to follow along with him the rest of the year. Few notes from outside the points in the 250 class. Starting off with Christian Janik, we mentioned him last week making his professional debut. He was under the Gizmo Racing Yamaha tent this weekend. He was the team's only 250 rider. Their usual suspects, CJ Bernard, Keegan Rowley, were not at Southwick, but Janik took second in the consolation race, the LCQ, to qualify 26-25 in the motos. A little bit more consistent this weekend in his second pro start. Southwick, of course, we've mentioned it already multiple times, how qualifying early in the morning can really put you on the right track for a great day. And P4 overall in qualifying, I bet nobody had this on their bingo card. Larry Fortin qualifying inside the top five. He's number 111 on a KTM 250. He qualified for his ninth AMA National. He's been racing some of these East Coast rounds the last few years. But Larry Fortin, he can always hold his head high and say that he qualified top five for an AMA National, 31-28, not quite a point scoring day, but Fortin made some of the locals proud, qualifying up front with the big dogs. Aiden Kiefer, a rookie in the class on his Phoenix Racing Honda. He's getting closer to his points, only a couple spots shy in the second moto, 23rd, which was his best effort of the season so far. He ran inside the top 20 for a good chunk of the moto, ended up losing some ground late. He's qualified for 5 of the first 6 rounds of the season, starting to improve little by little. And the last fellow we'll mention from the 250 class, Jan Krug, coming over from Germany. Door Motorsport Triumph, his usual team, also making the track. He made the cut in qualifying, but unfortunately, he crashed during the first moto, sat out the second one. Wish we could have seen more of Jan on the track on Saturday, but nonetheless, cool to see him over here in America. Always love seeing these international racers give it a shot against America's best. Now moving into the 450 class, and of course, a lot of international talent there as well, performing solidly. Valentin Guillot for the second time in 6 races this summer, the top non factory or privateer racer. He was consistent, a bit under the radar, but nonetheless, it was a great day for the Swiss man, for the Swiss native. 13-12 in the motos. Now 13th in points as well. He's taken the top non factory spot in points as well. 8 top 15s in the last 10 motos after a tough start, failing to score points this year at Fox Raceway. But Guillot is in form and he's performing well. Speaking of former MXGP competitors, actually a current MXGP competitor, some weekends every season. Roan van de Moosdijk on the KTM Kosak team machine. He turned heads once again, recording his best moto finish over here in America. Of course, only a 2 round trip, but it was the best moto finish by a privateer this season in the 450 class. 7th place in Moto 1. Van de Moosdijk was absolutely ripping out there. He was passing big names like RJ Hampshire, like Cooper Webb, ended the race P7. Second moto, he went down early, charged back up to P11, but a freak mechanical issue very late in the going took him out of things. Still a very successful trip stateside for Van de Moosdijk. 2 races here in America, some points on the board, and a lot of great memories for that bunch. He'll be back over in Europe. He said, in case you wondered, I lived the dream on his Instagram post recapping the trip to America. Hopefully, we see him back in the United States a little bit down the road. 15th overall, Money Mitchell Harrison on the Partzilla Rocket Blaster Power PRMX Kawasaki machine. No surprise that the 41 was in the points in both motos. He was grinding sand during the week before Southwick, and it showed 17-14, 13 more points on the board, and his second straight top 15. Shout out to Mitchell. Also improving, getting better, Lorenzo Locurcio, 16th overall on his Wildcat race team Gas Gas 2016, were his moto scores. He admitted to feeling a little bit under the weather, but he was still tenaciously working his way through the pack. First moto, he went down on the first lap, gained 17 spots after his crash to finish 20th, and then 16th place to end the day. As I mentioned, 4 straight top 20 moto finishes for Locurcio now. 2 good rounds back to back at Redbud and Southwick. A spot below him in the overall standings, Devin Simonson, his third national of the summer on a Club MX Yamaha. He rebounded from a tough first moto. He was running solid early on, but crashed and dropped deep in the field. Actually ended up 2 laps behind the leaders. But later in the day, he got back in that top 15 and matched his career best 450 MX Moto finish that he set at Ironman in 2024, that being a 15th place run. And also, relating to Club MX, someone who might not be on the Club MX team but has spent some time at that facility over the years, Brighton Carroll, of course, Life of a Privateer, number 483 on the Yamaha. usually has that signature blonde hair flowing out of the back of the helmet. Brighton got to score his career best moto finish. He's been at this for a few years. 17th place at Southwick to end the day. A really solid result. He scored points in the past at Hangtown, but now Southwick's 17th place run, best overall finish as well. 22:17, his first career top 20 overall outdoors. Great performance for the 483. Talk about some of the other riders who made cameo appearances. Shout out to Gus Reardon. He is a GNCC star, actually leading the XC2 class point standings right now, and he was racing aboard a Phoenix Racing Honda 450. Of course, the Phoenix team had Mike Witkowski at a national or two the last couple years. He was on their GNCC team. Now putting Reardon on the 450, another Aussie on the entry list as well. And it was a really solid day. Like fellow Aussie Mason Simmons, he got to score points. 18th place in the second moto, 23rd to start the day, which wasn't too bad either. Reardon says he exceeded his own expectations, and it looks like he'll be back for Millville as well, so he'll have another chance to score points. Continuing on with point scorers from Saturday in the 450 class, let's move on to Hamden Hudson now, who finished 22nd overall, second straight week with Hamden scoring points aboard his Partzilla rocket blaster power PRMX Kawasaki. He got an 18th place finish to begin the day in the first moto, but he went down early on in the second moto, dropped to 33rd. He got 8 spots back, but it wasn't enough to score points. 25th to end the day. However, Hudson can take some positives away. More points on the board. And of course, he seems very excited for this last stretch of races this season. A racer who was in Hudson's position from Redbud in terms of scoring his first career points. Shout out to Magnus Smith. If you are unfamiliar with him, Magnus is from Denmark. He came over to America this year. He actually participated in that Ultimate Rider TV/YouTube series and has been racing on his own this summer. He was racing for KL Racing Team last year in MX2 over in the MXGP series. He's number 456 aboard a Yamaha 111 Inc. BC Goggle Company, One Industries among those backing him. 1923 aboard his machine. He was pretty happy with his efforts and he said the hard work is paying off and it's showing. First 3 points in America. Congratulations to Magnus. And of course, that means that both Danes in the field, Mikkel Harup racing for Triumph 511 Factory Racing as well, both Danes in the points, which is really solid. Your last couple point scorers, first off, you have Grant Harlan, 25th overall on the KMR Champion Tool Storage KTM. Not sure what happened first moto, but he was only in 31st. And then second moto, it was a little bit better, 20th position, and he got 2 more points on the board. And last but not least, 26th overall, it was Justin Rodbell aboard the SLR Honda. And the funny thing is, Rodbell scored points in each motos, but like I mentioned with Russell Bacheri in the 250 class, some of the fluctuation really hurt guys. Rodbell went 21-21, but ended up 26th overall. It's also the second time Rodbell has scored points in both motos this summer, and coincidentally, it was also another double moto score. He went 17-17 a little bit earlier on in the season at High Point. Now, a few notes from outside the points on Saturday in the 450 class. Aiden Shive making his first start of the summer. Of course, he raced the 250 West Series in Supercross. He's back in the 450 class for the outdoor season after running a 250 last summer, number 137 on a KTM, just one spot shy of a point in the second moto. Don't know how many rounds he'll be running throughout the summer, but I would expect to see Aiden at a couple more throughout the rest of the year. Joey Crown has been competing at the last two nationals, of course. He is the primary test rider over at the Club MX Yamaha team, does a lot of suspension work for them as well. He's been racing a good bit in the J-Day Off-Road Series, so definitely still spinning laps on the racetrack, not just testing. 24-24 for Joey at Southwick. Pretty solid day. He qualified at his home race in Redbud last week as well. Won the consolation race to get in the show there. Matty Jorgensen was back on the SLR Honda. He was out toward the last part of Supercross with a wrist injury. He returned on Saturday. Unfortunately, he was a DNF in Moto 2, but nonetheless, great to see another Dane. I mentioned Mikkel Harup and Magnus Smith. Jorgensen back out there as well, representing Denmark. Unfortunately, Christian Craig, Quadlock Honda, two bad weekends in a row, and now Christian Craig is going to be on the injured list for a little bit. He was one of the victims of Southwick. Several victims claimed on Saturday. He mentioned on social media, and the Quadlock Honda team said that he suffered a T3 spinous process fracture. Thankfully, it won't require surgery, but he will definitely be out of action for a while. And it's an especially big blow knowing that the World Supercross Series is coming up, and he was so good in it last year. Got that race win at Gold Coast, Australia, and Craig would have probably been one of the top contenders, one of the top five guys in the series this year. Speedy recovery. Best wishes to Christian Craig and, of course, to all of those other riders who walked away from Southwick on the injured list. That will do it for this week's edition of the Unsung Heroes following the Crestview Construction Southwick National. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you one last time to Kyle Murdoch for joining us on the show this weekend, scoring a point on Saturday at Southwick before scoring a top 10 overall finish at Riverglade in the Triple Crown Series. Be sure to follow him the rest of the season. Of course, a long way to go in the Pro Motocross season, but a short time to get there. 5 rounds remaining, and of course, we'll be back next week to discuss the top privateers and underdogs from Spring Creek Raceway, Millville, Minnesota. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Trey Stire. Have a great week and enjoy the racing from Millville.